Welcome to the Money and Wealth Show. For Her, your knowledge source for financial wellness, wealth and well-being. Brought to you by the Women's Collection, a financial literacy platform designed for women. Welcome.
Okay, so welcome to this edition of the Money and Wealth Show for Her. I'm Terri Williams of the Women's Collection, and today we're focusing on financial planning for new parents. I'm joined by two very special guests today. The first guest is my daughter, Allison Hummel. Allison is a new mother of Oliver, who is 6 months old, my first grandchild. Allison is a grade 8 teacher in Halton District School Board, and of course is currently on mat leave. Her husband is also a teacher, an elementary teacher in Halton. Allison is also the owner of a small business called Love by Ollie Handmade, which she started on her mat leave. She's a very crafty person and basically shut in for her mat leave. She decided to get busy and make and sell natural teethers for babies. So very entrepreneurial of her. Also joining us is my former financial planner, Bev Moyer. Bev is a retired wealth advisor who built and led a successful wealth advisory practice for over 25 years. Now, she incorporated financial expertise with her healthcare background as a registered nurse, adding the dimensions of life, health, and wellness planning to clients' perspectives of their financial needs. Financial literacy and empowerment for clients and their children was a goal of her comprehensive approach to client service. Now, Bev is also a grandmother. Her son has 2 young children. One is 4.5 and the other one is 6 months, just like my little grandson, Oliver. So we're all very familiar with the high cost of having children. Allison a little bit more so because she's living it right now. Sometimes young couples don't really realize just how expensive it can be to raise a child. There's been lots of various research surveys done over the years, and what they found is that basically it costs about $10,000 to $15,000 per year to raise a child to 18 years old. So that is about $180,000 to $270,000 in total. And that does not include the cost of university. So that's a lot of money. So today we thought it'd be really helpful for those of you who are planning on having a family or have just started planning for a family or just have a child, to hear a discussion about what the cost could be to expect and financial planning strategies to consider when having a child. Now, our goal today is to give you some tips to help you manage your money as a young family and some strategies that can help reduce some costs. So let's get started with planning. So maybe Allison, will throw it over to you and you can tell us a little bit about the expenses that you did anticipate before you had Oliver. And then we can sort of move into the costs that you didn't anticipate and the impact of that. So over to you, Allison.
So there were, most of the items that we anticipated were big ticket items. So we knew that we needed a stroller, a car seat, a crib, a dresser, a change table, those big ticket items that we knew were expensive and we needed to buy. So we researched those items early on. We knew which ones we wanted. We knew that they were expensive. We budgeted, we saved for them, and we purchased those ourselves, which are awesome. We also knew we needed a ton of little items, which thankfully our baby shower covered most of those items for us. So things like bath items or diapering, clothes, toys, those things we were gifted a lot of, but we also needed to purchase as well, which we anticipated and we knew we needed to buy those things. But there were far more costs that we did not anticipate, tons of costs we didn't anticipate. So the biggest one I would say is probably medical expenses for us, for our situation at least. My son was born with a tongue tie. So he was having a lot of trouble feeding when he was really little and he wasn't gaining weight. So we had to get him looked at and he had a tongue tie. So we had to get that released. And even though it was performed by a dental surgeon, it was not covered. So that was very expensive. That we did not anticipate that cost at all. Also, we had a boy, so if you choose circumcision, that cost is also not covered anymore. So that was another expense. Mm-hmm. And then with all the feeding issues, we had to see a lactation consultant basically to teach my baby how to feed again with his new tongue. Right. And because of COVID, everything was closed. So the free lactation consultant clinic in the hospital was not operating. So we had to reach out to a private clinic. It was worth every penny, but that was very expensive. We had to go back weekly to make sure that he was gaining enough weight and that he was healthy, but just big costs that we did not anticipate in the medical area for sure.
So Bev, I believe that there are some ways that they can sort of mitigate some of these medical costs, and maybe you can talk a little bit about that before we go back to some of Allison's unanticipated costs.
Yes, well, and I just actually wanted to compliment Allison and her husband first on the fact that they anticipated and planned for those expensive baby care items and saved ahead of Oliver being born. That's really tremendous that you did that and were able to do that. In terms of the unexpected expenses, when you're filing your income tax return for the year, you're going to want to be sure to enter those medical and healthcare expenses on that return.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah, because that'll reduce the impact of those expenses.
Yeah, and maybe give some return to your income.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, good. And then what were some of the other unanticipated expenses? I know, Allison, as a teacher, you have to keep paying into your pension, or you got some lump sum payments, and they took lots of taxes. So people have to really realize that the taxes can work for you and work against you, and you have to take taxes into account.
Right. So, well, a lot of the unanticipated costs too revolve around monthly bills that we didn't really anticipate. So consumable items that we have to keep on buying month after month that we didn't really think about. So when you think of having a baby, you think you're going to have to buy diapers and wipes. But that's kind of it. So there's so much more to that are consumable items that you have to keep on purchasing. So things like diaper rash cream, vitamin D drops. If you're breastfeeding, you don't have vitamin D in your breast milk, so you have to give your baby vitamin D drops every day. Probiotics, which those two things are pretty expensive. Breast pads, diaper genie refills, to keep that stink away. Baby friendly dish soap and laundry detergent. These are just things that you have to keep on buying over and over again, and they're kind of they were in the back of our head. I guess we didn't really think about those things. But in terms of income and stuff, so I had to pay my benefits for the year in order to keep them, which I had no idea I had to do. So that was I was able to pay that sum in 3 payments to kind of soften the blow a little bit, because it was expensive, but it was still a cost that I didn't anticipate. For my pension, I have up to 5 years to pay that back if I want to, or I can choose as a teacher to just work an extra year and my retirement date kind of gets extended. So I haven't really made that decision yet, because it is very expensive. Thousands and thousands of dollars.
I think a lot of people don't realize, a lot of people say, well, teachers and government employees, have a great pension, they've got it made, but they pay a lot into that pension. And I don't think a lot of people know that. And, if we are reaching out to government employees or teachers or nurses or whomever, keep that in mind, that whatever you're paying in right now, you have to make it up, or your retirement date gets pushed out.
Especially for teachers too, who are listening. So we do get paid 12 months a year, but it's only for 10 months of work. So our pay for 10 months is spread out over 12. So they take a little bit of your paycheck for the September to June to pay you for July and August. So because my mat leave started in July, the beginning of July, I was paid my lump sum for July and August because I had worked those hours and earned that money. But they paid that in a lump sum as well. And because it's a high amount of money, it was also heavily taxed. Like I would say half. So you think you're going to get this big chunk of money, but it really isn't that big after the taxes and everything comes off.
Yeah. These are all things that people need to consider when they're thinking about going on mat leave and having a family, is that check with your employer on what the policies are and make sure that you're ready for them. So Allison, a lot of expenses that you have you been able to still save money?
So I have a TFSA that I have automatic payments they just go into. So I don't even think about it. It's in the back of my head. It just automatically goes into that account, and it's basically an emergency account. Last year in May, when I was pretty pregnant, our furnace conked out. So that was a big expense that we had to pay for, that we were able to kind of dip into our savings account to pay for that. We also had to buy a new car. We bought a more family-friendly vehicle. So we're paying down that debt. So it's not necessarily saving money, but it's eliminating debt that we have. And those are the main things that we're trying to save or minimize.
Right. And Bev, so how important is it for people to have emergency savings accounts? And I think this pandemic has really hit home the need for emergency accounts and to try to continue saving no matter what your expenses are.
Well, absolutely. And Allison, I think that you're a really good role model to your demographic in terms of you had made an effort to save, you had spent some time exploring your benefits and learning that you had to continue contributing to your pension. But savings, definitely having an emergency savings plan is really, really important. And depending on somebody's level of assets, we look at different amounts needed for an emergency savings pot. Some people are very anxious about running out of money, and they might have a year's worth of savings set aside. Others might just be living, the other extreme is living paycheck to paycheck. And I'd say for most people, you need something in between 1 to 3 months of savings just to cover those unexpected contingencies.
I think also this year, living through a pandemic has also kind of really brought that to light, how important it is to have a backup savings account, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would anticipate, and you can confirm this, Allison, is that certainly COVID has made this year is an unusual year, and it's forced us all to be inside. We're not out spending, going to restaurants or lunches and movies, things like that outside of the house. But as new parents, one of the ways that might be a way to save is you tend to be a little bit more homebound in those, especially those initial months when you're getting the breastfeeding going and establishing your life with the new baby.
Yeah, for sure. There definitely have been some cost saving things that came out of the pandemic, but also, Amazon is at the touch of your fingers. So it's very easy to just go online and to just purchase things without even thinking, because it's just like your credit card is already saved onto your Amazon account. So
the trade-offs of saving by not being out and about as much are offset by those things that, the miscellaneous, the baby wipes and the creams and things like this.
Yeah.
Now, have you started to receive the Canadian Child Benefit?
Yep, I have. Yep, I registered probably within the month that Oliver was born. So I get that monthly. And because this year is a strange COVID year, I also have been I received 2 payments for the Support for Families fund. So that's been helpful as well. But yeah, it's important for people to understand that when you get unemployment or EI for mat leave, it says 55%, but there's a cap. So if you make over a certain amount, it's not 55% of your wage, it's capped. So for me, I make over that amount. So I'm at the top. So it's about $500 biweekly, which is great, but it's not 55% of my wage. So just important to know that your income is definitely not going to be the same for that year.
Yeah. And the Canadian Child Benefit is a means tested benefit. So as you said, based on your income, but it's a tax-free benefit and it's paid monthly, which is really helpful. And then there's an Ontario Child Benefit you may not, as both of you as teachers, you may not qualify, but it's geared a little bit more to the lower income household, and it's tied, they're integrated together.
Yeah, so that's a little bit of extra income for you as well. So that's good.
Yeah.
Now, so lots of expenses beforehand to save for. We had a great online shower for Allison, so she got lots of the little things from all of her friends and my friends. And then the big things that come afterwards, right? Lots of the expenses. Now, looking forward to the future, another big cost that you're going to have to look after is daycare when you go back to work. So tell us a little bit about what you did with respect to daycare, or if you've done anything yet.
So I actually started researching daycare when I was pregnant, because through friends, I've learned that some daycare spots are very hard to secure. And I wanted to make sure that I had something set because I needed to go back to work in September. So we have a home daycare for Oliver secured for September. And it's about $900 a month, which is a pretty big expense. It's probably the biggest expense we have other than our mortgage. So it's really good to anticipate how expensive home daycares and childcare centers cost. And I know centers cost a little bit more than home daycare. But the reason why we went with the home daycare is because my husband and I are both teachers. And so we really wanted to find a daycare that was teacher schedule friendly, because we don't need care for March break over Christmas and the summer. So by going with the home daycare, we are able to do that. So we only have to pay for 2 days a week throughout the summer rather than 5, which will be nice, and have that option to send Oliver if we need to as well, which is great.
Yeah, that's great. And Bev, I understand that there's a way for Allison to mitigate the daycare costs as well.
Exactly, Terry. Canada offers the opportunity for an annual child care deduction. And for a child under 7, it's about $8,000 a child. So that's not going to offset all of your expenses, but that will definitely be very helpful. And there's lots of information on the website. If on just Google child care deductions for people that aren't familiar with it, and there's a special form that has to be used. So hang on to all your expenses. It is for child care. And if there's if somebody has a disabled child or a dependent of any age, there's also additional deductions for that category.
Okay, that's great. Good
Yeah.
to know. Yep. So daycare is what's next, but then let's look way into the future. Let's talk about Oliver going to university or college. One of the best savings vehicles out there is the Registered Education Savings Plan. We've already set one up for Oliver, right, Allison?
Yep, it's already done. Good.
Well done, you two.
Well,
Allison, you are a product of your mother.
Yeah, she's got a mother that's helping coach her, but she's learned a lot over the years, so she's doing a lot of this on her own. But Bev, maybe you can tell us about the benefits of RESPs. Like the number one benefit is you get free money from the government.
Absolutely. So the government offers a registered education savings plan for all Canadians with children. And there's an annual amount that is allowed. It's $2,500 per child. And the free money that Terry is talking about is if a parent makes the maximum contribution, the $2,500, the government will add an education grant of $500. So that's a 20% return on that $2,500. So it's a very, very attractive benefit that I encourage all people to take advantage of. Now,
I think one of the only requirements is the child has to have a social insurance number, which when you apply for your child benefit, the Canadian child benefit, you actually have to apply for your social insurance number for the child as well.
Yeah. And then when they're being set up, usually parents will start with the registered education plan for their first child. But if you're having 2 or more children, there's also an advantage in setting up a family plan, and you can add those subsequent children onto the plan. And where that's very useful is each child is still able to only get the education grant per child that the government allows, which is $7,200 over the lifespan of the plan. But the money that the parents have contributed and the growth on that money can be shared within the family, which is a very forward-looking planning tool.
Yeah. So yeah, so everyone can get up to $7,200 free from the government, which is awesome. There's nothing wrong with free money. And if you put in $2,500 per year, you'll get that $500. Now you can miss 1 year, and you can put $5,000 in every 2 years and still get the $500 per year, but that's it. Like if you miss any other years, that you can't carry forward that grant. So, try to, use gift money, like any money that the child gets for gifts or any kind of extra windfalls that you might get. Try to, really try to make that $2,500 per year contribution, because that's $500. Yeah. So we set one up, Allison set one up with a discount broker because we want to be able to invest in the stock markets, because Oliver has 18 years before he goes to school, or 17 years. I think they start university at 17 now. So Bev, talk to us a little bit about, and Allison hasn't quite chosen the investments yet, and I'm gonna help her with that. But talk to us a little bit about the fact that the money in the RESP grows tax-free. So take advantage of the long-term investing strategy of investing in the stock markets, at least for 10 of the 17 years. So you're getting the long-term growth. You're hoping to get the long-term growth of the stock markets. Talk a little bit about the investing strategy.
Yeah, so that's a really good point, because a new parent doesn't necessarily have a lot of experience with investing. They don't want to lose their money, and they might tend to be overly cautious and go into fixed income, GIC types of investments. But in this environment where the interest rates are so low, you're just not taking advantage of that huge length of time, that 18 years. And, it could even be 20 years, because kids sometimes have a gap year before they start school. So that's a long investing time period. So investing in equities or shares of companies that are growing is more advantageous, because there's a little more risk, but there's a higher rate of return. Now, that being said, sometimes people are very concerned about, they don't want to lose the value of their savings for their child, so they will take a conservative stance. And so a midway route, if somebody's not comfortable with 100% stocks, all oriented towards long-term growth, they can get what's called a balanced investment portfolio. So there's a little bit of fixed income for stability, and the bulk of the money, maybe 80 or 90% of it, is geared to the market and is going to grow over the long term.
Yeah, so that's great advice, because I know there's lots of young people that are not familiar with investing in the stock markets, and they're not familiar with the growth potential over 15, 17 years. And actually RESPs can be open until someone's 35 years old. So you have until that long to use the money. So what happens, so that's great. And inside the RESP, the money grows tax-free. So if you buy shares at $10 a share, and in 15 years, they're $50 a share, you don't pay tax on any of that growth. So the other thing about RESPs, now there is one caveat that you have to think about, is that if your child doesn't end up going to school, so number one, it can be open for 35 years. Number two, if you have a family plan, then the money that you've got saved for one child can be used for another child or another child. So there's two ways to mitigate the risk of that. But if your child doesn't end up going to school and these things don't work, then what happens is the parent that put the money into the plan get the money back. You have to pay all the grant money back to the government. And then the third pool of money, and that's the growth. So that's all the interest and all the growth that's been accumulated. That can actually be rolled into your registered retirement savings plan if there's room. And if there's no room in the retirement savings plan, then you have to actually pay tax on it as income plus a 20% extra charge, so an extra fee. So when you're managing an RESP over the years, it's very important to get financial advice and to make sure you have an advisor who can help you understand the implications of what your contributions are invested in, and also as you get closer to the child going to school, what the implications are coming out of. And you know, Allison, at this point in time right now, I can help you sort of choose an investment to invest for Oliver. But you know, as you and Rob get older and start taking on more debt, maybe move to a bigger house and have more kids and stuff, I absolutely recommend getting a financial advisor, someone like Bev. Bev helped help your father and I manage our money until we retired early. So having a financial advisor is also something that I think that all new parents should consider doing and talking to as well.
Yeah, I think it's really important because, you know, you respond as new parents responsible for a dependent, and you want to position that child for the best future possible. And then just when you think of how hard you work, anyone works in their career, you want to have some financial goals. You want some help in terms of sticking to those goals. You want to be able to take advantage of the nuances and opportunities that Terri was just speaking about. So I think it's really, really important that people work with a financial advisor, and they want to work with somebody that's also going to help them learn so that they understand. And Allison, you're very fortunate because you've got a very informed parent who is very happy and wants to share her wisdom. It's intimidating for many people working with an advisor, and they come to an advisor thinking they've got to know all the answers. And my attitude is the flip of that. When I'm meeting with young people or even people that have been working for many years, I assume that I know a lot more than they do, and it's my job to help teach them so that they understand and can take advantage of that information and be empowered.
Yeah. And also just a little plug here for the Women's Collection. There's lots of educational resources for women and for men on the Women's Collection website. So a little plug there. Now, Bev, you mentioned something about, you know, you've got someone depending on you. That sort of leads us to the discussion about whether new parents should have, number one, life insurance and disability insurance, and number two, a will. There's two other pieces of the financial picture that new parents need to consider.
Absolutely. And we talk about opportunities to grow and move forward, but we also have to anticipate when we're doing planning that there are risks that we face. And as new parents have to think that of three main risks: the risk of premature death of one or both of the parents. They have to think about disability and also the potential for a critical illness. And all three of those risks have the potential, would all impact their future income. So we'll talk a little bit about insurance, but it also deals with the issue of needing a will as well, because you have a dependent, that baby is responsible on the parents. What happens, God forbid, if the parents are both killed? Who's going to take care of that child? And thinking about who would be the guardian. Money would presumably be available. We'll talk about where the money will come from with insurance.
Yep.
And who's going to be managing the life of the child according to your values and your goals and aspirations for your child. So they're very serious components, difficult to deal with. Nobody can anticipate that happening to them, but life does happen. In terms of insurance, the simplest solution is to put in very, very inexpensive term insurance that covers the 20 years that the child is a dependent. And if there's enough insurance that's on the life of both the mother and the father, then that money would fall into the estate and would presumably at least eliminate the major debt that most young people have, which is their mortgage. So that's really important to have that. And young
Yeah.
people are healthy and they're young, so it's a very inexpensive type of insurance.
And Bev, there's probably a lot of people. So Allison and Rob are lucky. They have been able to save and buy a house. They have a house. And when they bought that house, you did get insurance, right, Allison?
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. They got term life insurance. They were both under 30. I don't know if Rob was under 30. Yeah, he was, wasn't he?
I think he was 29 or turned 30 a few months later. Yeah.
So they got very, very economically priced insurance on both of them that would definitely cover their debt. And combined, if anything happened to both of them, it would definitely set up their children fine. So a lot of people might not consider doing that though, unless they have a house and they've thought about the fact that, what happens if we pass away, we're going to have this big debt. So just a reminder to young people, if you're still renting, you still might want to think about life insurance because of the baby versus paying off debt. So that's two reasons.
Yeah. Then the other thing is, I 100% agree with you, Terry. The other thing is that because the biggest debt is a mortgage, often younger people would think that they have to get mortgage insurance, which is attached to their mortgage. The advantage of having term insurance is that there's a cost that is consistent over the 20 years of the term. And the value, the death benefit, stays the same or remains level, is the technical term, for the life of that 20-year term. Whereas with mortgage insurance, your goal is to pay off your mortgage. So you're paying the same monthly cost of the insurance for something that's declining in value. Yeah. And would pay out less.
Yeah, definitely. Term insurance is definitely, to me, the smartest option.
Yeah. Now, you also mentioned, we talked about disability as a potential risk, and that's very expensive to get it on an individual basis. And many people would get it through their employment as a group benefit, which helps. It's when it comes that way, it's taxable, which is a disadvantage, but it does cover off that risk. If somebody is self-employed or their employer doesn't offer disability insurance, then my recommendation is to look to see if they're part of an association or an alumni that may offer a group benefit that's a little bit less costly.
Yeah. And then the third type of insurance that young couples might want to consider, although it is kind of expensive, is critical illness insurance. Yeah. And that's where if you get diagnosed with one of a number of diseases that will be listed in the policy, you actually get a lump sum of money, and you can use that money for anything. So it might be for extra treatment. It might be to change your home, to do a renovation. So critical insurance is also very, very good to have, and especially when you're young, because it's cheaper. As you get older, it's quite expensive.
Yeah, and it offers a lot of flexibility, as you say, in terms of how it could be spent. I mean, somebody could have a critical illness, their life is going to be shortened, and they're going to go on a trip. Mm-hmm. Or I know one person who had breast cancer, and she used her critical insurance money to help pay for a very special wig for her to continue working. What is helpful with critical illness insurance is that it's possible to purchase it with a benefit called return of premiums.
Oh, okay.
So, we put that in place. None of us want to get the critical illness. And, many of the policies at age 75 or an age earlier than that, depending on how it's set up, if the person hasn't claimed the critical illness or had to claim for it, their premiums are all returned. So, that's good. You put money out, but you get it back.
Yeah. So as you can hear, everyone, there's lots to consider when you're planning on having a baby, and then the baby's future. There's lots of financial implications. Again, the Women's Collection website has lots of information, and really, invest in yourself by learning, by educating yourself about all the ins and outs of managing your money properly. Did either one of you have anything else you wanted to say for our audience?
Good luck to all the new parents. It's the best thing ever.
Yeah. Forget the money. It's the best thing ever.
So worth it.
And I think it's lovely to have parents and grandparents that are there to help support new parents and to help contribute to some of the finances.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a very special opportunity in people's lives.
Yeah, it's a family thing. So thank you very much, Allison. And thank you very much, Bev. Really appreciate this. I think that our audience has learned a few tips and tricks and things to ask financial advisors about. Go into your bank and talk about RESPs, like learn a little bit more about all these different things that can certainly alleviate any kind of money stress that you might have. So thanks a lot. Really appreciate it. And everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating. If you have ideas for any future topics and discussions, please contact us via our website at www.thewomenscollection.ca. Hope you will join us next time for another episode of Money and Wealth.